How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the Crew First Culture Podcast. This is Jeremy, and as always, thank you for joining me today. I feel like I got a frog in my throat. Sorry. Today, I've actually got a guest for the first time in a while, and excited about that. My friend Taylor Anderson is here with me today. How are you doing, Taylor?
I am doing fantastic. Thank you so much for asking me to be on here today.
You're welcome. I'm looking forward to kind of returning the favor. So, Taylor is I guess, a host slash co-host sometimes with her husband on the sorry, the Couplings Fire Podcast. I'm trying very hard to not be annoying with this sinus stuff I've got on, so I will focus on that. But the Couplings Fire Podcast is something that Taylor has been kind of involved in, and like I said, her husband has been started with it and then kind of bounces in here and out when he can. And so something that I've started to really enjoy listening to, and got to meet her in July at the Ozarks, and just enjoying that, just getting to know people and networking. And so I wanted to have her on and kind of let her tell a little bit about herself, and maybe gain a few listeners that hadn't heard of her. And so here we are. Glad to see you.
This is awesome. And yeah, Chris joined me at the very beginning. We started together, and then he had to go. He was going through his probationary period and everything through his fire department, and that takes so much time. So it's like, okay, take a break from the podcast for a while. It actually ended up being a year. And then he comes back in with me for what we call fire flicks and chill. So I haven't seen a lot of fire movies. So we started like watching those together, and then we'll wait to talk about them until we can record them. And it's been a lot of fun. So I think we're coming out with a second one in a couple of weeks.
Good. So I guess let's just start kind of with you. And, I usually say just as little or as much as you want to say about yourself, but really this is going to be kind of all about you, at least to start with. So kind of what's your story? Where'd you grow up? Things like that. What got you into the fire service?
Okay, so my story is an interesting one. To me, it is interesting. I don't know, but so I'm a volunteer firefighter in Nebraska, in Southeast Nebraska, and I've been doing this for 9 years. Started in 2013, and basically the way that started is I moved to a small town. I got married to my husband. Didn't know anybody. Didn't know what to do. I was very, very bored. I'm like, what do I actually fill my time with in a town of like less than 2,000 people? Like I came from a big city. How am I supposed to deal with this? And my husband had just joined the volunteer fire department there. And before I had like even moved to this town, I didn't even know there was such a thing as a volunteer fire department. I thought they were all paid, being very honest. Like who thinks about those things unless you're in the fire service most of the time. So I didn't have any idea. So I started joining the fire department there. I actually joined it as a photographer. So I wasn't even a straight firefighter to begin with. And after a few calls and about a year of doing that, then I caught the bug. I got the adrenaline rush, of course, and I loved being around all of the people in the station. And it was just a big, I don't know, it was the brotherhood that caught me and brought me in. And I wanted more of that. So from there, I just kind of, kept going and actually became full-fledged firefighter there, and did that until we moved to the city, for my husband to get his full-time firefighting job, which he had been working for a little while, and excited for him to get. And now that we're here, I found another volunteer department to join, and absolutely love it. They are, I couldn't have found a better volunteer fire department to join. I feel like, this is, I feel like where I'm meant to be. So I'm really excited for this journey to start. So that's where I am now. Let's see here. What else? I am a board member with the Nebraska Society of Fire Service Instructors, and we put on the annual Les Luker Conference in the beginning of February every year in Nebraska. So that's something that's fun. A bunch of volunteers just kind of getting together, firefighters from across Nebraska, trying to put together another training in the area. Just to make sure we get good training coming to Nebraska, because that's something that's always needed. So, but other than that, the podcast, I've been doing that since, let's see, I started that at the beginning of last year, beginning of 2021. The years are starting to blend together. I'm starting to figure out.
Yeah, I get that for sure. Especially the last two or three for
I
sure.
know, right? Like this, the pandemic and stuff just like pushed everything together. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, I've been doing the podcast since 2021 and it's been going great. I mean, when I first started, I just expected honestly one or two people to listen to it. And now it's kind of exploded, which is great. And um I still like treating it though as like it's just still those one or two people. Like it's one of those things that I like to keep that kind of feel very, very close and very, very close knit. So
Yeah.
yeah. So that yeah,
Yeah.
that's a little bit about me and where I am now. So
So you mentioned being on the board. Do you have a career as well, or is your career at home?
oh, so my career actually, so I used to be a freelance sports photographer and graphic designer for like 9 years back when I was in that small town. Now that I moved, honestly, that was a little bit too much stress for me. So now I just do a part-time job as an office assistant at local financial business here in town. Other than that, pretty much that is like my part-time hobby job to keep money flowing in while my other unpaid job is honestly all this fire stuff. Like it's
Yeah.
it's the volunteer fire side. It's doing this podcast stuff. It's doing the conference stuff. It's researching, it's learning. That is the other stuff like I love doing. So that fills up so much of my time.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, so that's where I'm at right now.
And so no kids, correct?
No kids as of
Okay.
yet. So
Okay.
someday.
Trying to take advantage of a little time that you have a little bit more freedom, I guess, if that does happen.
Yeah, I know
That's
it's been 10. So my husband and I have been married for 10 years actually in a couple days. Um, And so it's like 10 years of doing all this fire stuff with no kids. I honestly can't imagine it. Like it's been very, very easygoing and very much like I can go to a conference if I want to, as long as Chris is okay with it and like things like that. Like we can just go off and do what we want. So I know when kids come into the picture, it's going to change things, which will be interesting, but I think it'll be a kind of fun challenge. So, and
yeah.
kind of figure out like, okay, how much can we get away with? How many trainings can we take the kids to and stuff like that? Or like, can we take someone with us to watch the kids? And, I
Yeah.
actually kind of excited to like eventually figure out like how to work all those logistics. It's very
Yeah.
much a thing where fire is so much a part of both my husband's and I like words right there, actual grammar, but it's a big part of our lives that like
Yeah.
we're not going to stop this once we have kids. So how do we work it around this, to make sure that we are spending good family time, with our kid and stuff like that, but we are actually still getting the training and networking and seeing the people we want to. So,
Yeah. And I think that's a kind of a unique and cool thing about you two is that you both have that, you both have that like-minded or just that interest, because most firefighters, if they are firefighters that are interested in, going out and getting training and going to these conferences and things like that, they don't have that luxury.
mhm.
Most of them have spouses that aren't really into firefighting. I mean, they are probably supportive, but they don't share that interest. And so that's pretty cool to be able to not only go together to something if that's what you want to do, but actually enjoy the experience together when you're there. So that's pretty neat.
Yeah, it's really awesome. It's definitely a different dynamic than what I've seen through a lot of the fire service. I've talked to a few other couples who are in the same boat, and it's really nice because it is a unique opportunity, and it is something that we can do together. Other couples bond by doing other types of things or date nights, or they have other activities that they do together. This is really one of our best ways that we bond, and like one way like. We don't do a ton of date nights. Like what our date nights consist of is we go on a walk and we talk fire. Which is totally like nerding out, I feel like sometimes. But yeah, it's definitely a different dynamic. And not that I put down any couple out there who are on different spectrums, the spouses don't want to do the fire stuff. That's okay.
Mhm.
Have your own thing, like I'm not saying in any way are we like quote unquote better couple or anything,
Oh yeah.
it's just definitely just different.
Yeah. No, I was just the reason I bring it up is just because it's neat to me that you can share that. Yeah, I think one of
Hmm.
the biggest obstacles, at least kind of from my perspective, that a lot of firefighters have to overcome to do these things that we're talking about is that, that family balance,
Yeah.
how much time are you spending away from your family and all that. And being like you two are, you aren't really taking anything away because you're both enjoying the same thing. And so for me personally, my wife, she doesn't like a lot of people. She's just not a people person. I mean, she
Hmm.
enjoys family and things and friends, but she just doesn't have a lot of interest in like the socializing and all that. But she is more than happy to follow me to a conference as long as it has a nice pool or a beach, and she'll sit there and read a book all day while I'm in class, and then we'll get together and spend time together after class is over. And so we can make it work, but at the same time you just got to figure out kind of how to make it work. So that's one thing that I feel like there are some conferences, and maybe they're getting to be more and more, that are kind of a little bit more spouse friendly and or even family friendly. So that's a pretty neat thing for that I've noticed here lately for sure.
Yeah, I know. Actually, so you mentioned the Ozarks earlier, how we finally met in person. It was so cool. But when I went to that, it was actually ended up right in the middle of Chris's set. And so he had worked for 24 hours. So I didn't get to see him before I left. And then I left and I was gone for like 5 days. And then he still worked another 24 hours after I got back. So it was a
Oh,
full week that I didn't see him. And so
yeah,
actually, that was kind of tough on us because he
yeah,
didn't get to come with and things.
yeah,
And so we figured out from that, like, we do have to be kind of careful, especially like if it's during his set, like, okay, how long of a conference is okay, like, and when I go to the conference, how much time is actually required to, okay, this sounds bad saying required, but how much time do both of us need to kind of reset with each other and have time? Because at conferences, things run at a million miles an hour.
yeah.
You are constantly going from one to the next, and you don't want to miss out of things.
Hmm.
And so trying to even take 10 minutes, 20 minutes out of the day to talk to your spouse can seem like a burden when you're there, at the same time, like, you also need that. They need that because they
Yeah,
haven't seen you. And honestly, especially for Chris, he's missing out on this fun conference. And I don't know, it was an interesting thing to work through. So
yeah,
hopefully I think next year we have planned for him to come with me. So at
good.
least there's that. But
Oh yeah. Yeah, just trying to find ways to make, whatever work. Yeah, like you
hmm
said, I think that now that I've been involved in these type of things over the past couple of years, it really is something that's important for me. Just my mental health and my career health. I think it's definitely something that I need to put a little bit of value in. It's just, where is that value? How much is that value? Because yeah, it's good for me, but it also can be a little too much really quickly. That's the one thing about our job or profession, whatever you want to call it, is it's very easy to be sucked in and just be taken away with it. I mean, you're doing fun things, you're learning fun things, you're helping people, and all these things make you feel good, and you want to do more and all that. And it's just easy to
Lose yourself.
turn around and see that, oh my gosh, I haven't been, really at home or
hmm
physically present or even just intentionally present when I am home. And so it's definitely easy to do. So finding that balance and still remaining in kind of in those areas, is been a struggle for at least me, trying to make sure that everything is got its place.
I know. So I used to have it open to record podcasts and stuff like that. So Chris's schedule is an every other day schedule for like 2 weeks, and then he gets a certain time off, and it's really nice getting that like week or so off. It's like a vacation every 3 weeks. It's fantastic. But the every other day weighs us
That's
down.
hard. Yeah.
So I work my part-time job Monday, Wednesday, Friday all day. And so on the weeks where he works Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, then the days he's home, I'm working. And so
Hmm.
then we can only see each other just for those evenings. And like Wednesday nights, we have stuff filled with church like crazy. So pretty
Yeah.
much it's Monday evening and Friday evening, we even get to see each other for that week. And it took a lot getting used to. And I used to schedule podcast interviews on those nights and have it open that people could do that. And it took so much out of me. And I'm like, I don't even get to see my husband. So
Yeah.
then I learned very quickly, which is luckily I did, because it would have like drained me otherwise. But I learned very quickly, okay, I'm just going to take those weeks, just take those days out of the schedule. People cannot schedule for those nights. Like
Yeah.
they can do it for my days off when he's at work. That's fine. And if they need to wait for that kind of a day, they can wait till the next week. Like,
Yeah.
people can be flexible, and it's hard to make myself remember that, okay, I don't have to be available to everyone at all times. I have to
Yeah.
make sure that we're actually like keeping time for us to actually stay sane and keep a good family life. Because if we start falling apart, there's none of this extra stuff.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. That's something, I look back at 2020, I guess, is when I kind of started mine. And, I was given some advice by another friend, podcast host, of making it more consistent, having it on a consistent day every week so people kind of know what to look for. And so I went for it. I started doing an episode every I think Thursday of the week. And then for some reason I started doing a shorter episode on Monday every week. So I was doing two every week, and I was doing that for a long time. And I would do it during morning hours when nobody was home. It's not like I was, taking away from time that they were here. And so it didn't feel like I was losing anything,
mhm.
family wise, time wise. But my wife brought it to me a couple different times that, it definitely is causing some issues. And it was hard for me to understand, because it's like, nobody's even here. I don't understand it's why you're saying that. But now looking back on it, and I can't even hardly do one a month, regularly. I just, man, it's hard for me to fathom how I was able to do that, because it just takes a lot. And so
Mhm.
I don't know if I was just not being honest with myself or what, but there is a lot involved in doing this. And especially if you're trying to make it, that regularly, it was too much. And so kind of as soon as I stepped back, man, it was like, whoa, you know, there there is definitely some changes that need to be made here. I didn't even notice, until I took that step back. And so it kind of took me a while to get back kind of to doing any of it. Just trying to kind of slowly work my way back, because I enjoy it.
Oh
It's
yeah.
been an amazing way of meeting some great people, and just trying to share some of my message and things like that. And so it's not something I want to give away and turn away from. Kind of like really intentionally figure out how much of a place it needs to have in my life. And so that's something I've definitely had to work through over the past couple years for sure myself.
Yeah, and you find out eventually people are okay with that. They're okay. Like, as much as I strive for every Friday, that is something that I've done from the very beginning. And I've missed 2 weeks so far in a year and a half. My last one was just a couple weeks ago that I missed. Just because I was sick and I didn't have any previously done. I ran out of my pre-recorded episodes, and yeah, there's not always, you don't always have things you want to talk about every week, but some weeks you just can't stop talking, like you're
Yeah.
like there's everything coming to the forefront. And so like it's something where I try not to push something out if I don't feel it.
Yeah.
And but if I miss a week or whatever it is, people understand that. They understand at least the people who, I should say, the people who matter,
Yeah.
the people who care understand that, you're going to miss some things. You're going to drop the ball sometimes. And it's okay, because you need to keep everything else going smoothly. And they'd rather have your best from you and intentional you when you're there than just absent-minded, just trying to push something out.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a really important thing to maybe even go back over what you just said is, there were several times when I was wanting to kind of keep it going, but
Hmm.
I didn't really feel a message. Yeah, I could have came up with something and just talked about for 20, 30 minutes and say that, I checked the box that week. But I don't want to do that. I don't want to just put stuff out. If I'm going to talk about it, it means that I truly have something, either something I feel like is a weight on me that I need to share, or something that I feel like people need to hear. And so that's I totally agree with what you said there for sure. The so we're talking about your podcast, obviously. What led you to starting it? Kind of what got you in that space? Because just what I've interacted with you and talked with you about, you seem pretty similar to me in the fact that you just seem like this isn't something natural for you. It feels like you have to kind of almost pull a little bit extra within yourself to get going. That's kind of how I would describe myself. Is that correct, or am I off?
That is definitely correct. I actually have to do like a little like kind of like pumping time like before I actually start recording every episode. Like I'll throw some tunes on, like completely jam out for a little bit. I actually have to play my intro before I start, just that way I can like get myself in the right mindset for it. Like I have to go over, what I want to say, and just kind of like get it all run down to my head, of like, this is the stuff, or spend about 15 minutes, going over like, okay, here's some cool fire stuff, get me in the mood for it. Like there, I have to pump myself up to actually get to recording these things. Otherwise it just comes out flat. And so basically where it all started from, back in 2020, through almost of 2020, everyone's in the point, they're like, what are we doing here? I think everybody had that collective thought. And it got to the point towards late 2020, around November time, where I found myself, I was so engrossed in the fire service. I wanted to do more. I wanted to find more. Everything shut down. There weren't any conferences to try to go to. There wasn't anywhere to go try to learn stuff. The fire service was going online, so you're more online, so people were talking more, so that was fantastic. But it was pushing this energy into my body of like, okay, I need somewhere to let this out. I need some sort of an outlet. I found myself getting so frustrated and having so much energy that I actually saw myself becoming destructive in my current volunteer fire department at the time. It started getting bad. Like I was doing things I wouldn't normally do. I was saying things I wouldn't normally say, just because I was frustrated, because I wanted to do more. There's so much stuff in here that I wanted to let out. And I just I feel all that energy coming back, just because it was such a pivotal time of just, what am I doing here? And just seeing these destructive behaviors come from me. I'm like, what am I doing? Like, this is not me. I know it's not me. The people around me knew it wasn't me, but we didn't know what to do. They didn't know how to handle it. I didn't know how to handle it. So I brought it to Chris, saying, and so back up a step here. So I'd listened to a bunch of podcasts and stuff like that. And I'd been listening to yours like pretty constantly at that point, and a few other people's, but I was like, I think this is what I need to do. Like, I don't know why, but I'm stuck on podcasts anyways. And I have a lot of thoughts in my head. And I know at that point, there was already a lot of fire podcasts out there. But I was like, I know this is just going to be one of the many, and it's probably going to get lost in everything, in the sea of fire podcasts. But there's something here that I don't hear talked about. There's these few points and things that, like, they have good points. Everybody has great points. I love listening to them, but I have something in me I need to get out. And this seems like a great platform, especially like I'm not used to like doing camera stuff too often, so like, I'm not sure I want to go video yet, but audio looks perfect to me at the moment. And so November, December 2020, I talked to Chris about it. I'm like, I can't do this alone. Like that's too big of a step for me. So you're going to do it with me pretty much. And he told me, okay, think about it for a week, 2 weeks. If you still feel this strongly about it, let me know and we'll do it. But he wanted me to make sure, like, this is not just something you're just jumping into and you're going to fizzle out with. Like, you have to want to do this if you're going to do it. Yeah. So I went and I thought about it for that week, 2 weeks, and I even let it go for like several months, because I really wanted to make sure. I was wrestling with this thing. Like, I had this feeling in my body, and this may sound bad, but I've never had this big of a push to do anything in my life. Like I didn't even have this big of push to get married to my husband, and it was just something inside of me, God pushing me to do something with it. And I'm like, is this really what I should be doing? And apparently, yes. And Chris thought I forgot about it, honestly. He's like, oh, she didn't
Thought
bring
he
it
got
back
off the
up.
hook.
Exactly. He thought he got off the hook.
Mm.
And I brought it up to him in January of 2021 then. And he's like, oh, we're back on this. I'm like, I still feel just as strongly, if not more strongly about this. We need to do this. So we started recording a couple episodes. They were very botchy. Like it's so bad. And the worst thing is that they're still online. I will not take them down, but oh man, I hate it when I see someone listen to one of those just because they're, it's the first episodes. Everyone's like, oh, cringe. Okay. Um, but then we didn't actually release any yet. I didn't have the courage to actually release it. We kept going over it. We had friends listen to them, just make sure like it sounded good, make sure we weren't saying anything that was like going to get us in trouble or anything. Cause that was like a big deal too, of like, we don't know what we can say, what we can't say. How do we tread this line with stuff? And then I ended up going to the Les Luger conference for that year for 2021. And I started talking to some people about it, about the idea, what I had, and their thoughts about it. And they all had great things to say about it. And the few that I talked to there, the few friends and instructors I talked to there, they were like, yeah, it sounds like you have enough passion for it. You should do this. You have enough to talk about. And I still wasn't quite sure. Well, then what happened that year, some big of a fluke deal. You know how you're in the right place at the right time just for some stupid reason? That's totally what happened to me. I was just sitting around and the board of directors went into their yearly meeting thing. So I'm like, well, I'm bored. I'm waiting for my husband to show up anyways. I'm just going to go sit in on this board meeting. And I've been there for a couple of years going to other classes, so they'd see me around. And so I'm sitting in there and they need a new board member. And then Shane Smith got up and nominated me to be a board member. And I'm like, whoa, what is happening here? Like, I just came in here because I needed something to do for a little bit and I wanted to see what you guys were doing, like what is this? And then pretty much it was a whirlwind. They voted me on, and it was that push of like, okay, imposter syndrome much? Like, how am I on this board right now? I'm in my mind, a lowly volunteer firefighter, like I'm not even any sort of leadership or anything on my fire department. Like this doesn't make any sense to me. Why would they vote me onto this thing? And then I don't know, after talking with the guys for the rest of the weekend, the board and stuff, and just kind of through that whole experience, and then them actually, I guess, telling me what they saw and why they voted me on and things like that. It gave me that extra push, that extra boost of confidence. I'm like, okay, I actually know what I'm talking about a little bit. I mean, I say in the beginning of all my episodes, I don't claim to be an expert. I never will claim to be an expert on anything. There's so much I don't know out there. Actually, a lot of times I probably know the least amount from the rest of the people in the room, but I like asking questions and I like bringing thoughts forward that maybe other people don't want to say or don't think about. And it was from that mindset that I decided, okay, fine, we'll go ahead and start publishing. So that's where it was. And I think I was super ecstatic because like in the first 2 weeks, we had 20 listens to the first podcast. And I was like so excited. And it's just so funny because to look back on that now, it's like, yeah, that was 20 listens. You were so excited, Taylor. And now look at it. It's crazy. But yeah, I would have been happy if, one of my best friend in Illinois would listen to it and my mom would listen to it, kind of thing. And now it's just, yeah, it's crazy. So history.
I think it's very interesting just listening to that story, because that's very similar. I mean, you change the names of the people involved, and it's basically what got me here.
Yeah.
The frustration and the irritation that I was getting built inside myself, and kind of realizing that if I didn't find a good positive outlet for it, I was going to find myself in trouble for reasons that made no sense. Trying to do good things, but getting in trouble trying to do them. It wasn't something I was willing to do. So luckily, that path has led me to find those outlets so that it didn't lead that way. But yeah, it's neat to see and hear the stories of where they are, where people are now, and why they are there. Frustration and anger and irritation and resentment. Those are things that you wouldn't think are good things. They're generally bad words, but
Mm-hmm.
that's what has led you on this journey. And so it's cool to see people doing good things with those bad situations.
Yeah, it's crazy. They are definitely emotions and definitely scenarios that push you forward one way or another. You can either let it completely destroy you and you'll crumble, or you'll actually find some way to actually hopefully bring some good out of it. So
Yeah. So you talked about, you had something different. You felt like you had something different to share. Is that something that you could put some more words to, or is it something that you just can't really define, and it's just something you feel?
I will try to put words to it. Well, a lot of the part was definitely the small town volunteer feel. You don't have too many podcasts doing it out there. You have a few that are really, really good podcasts out there. Like I love listening to Brian Soller's podcast, Professional Brotherhood. I love listening to the Volunteer Firefighter podcast. There's some guys out of Canada doing that one. Those are some great podcasts. I love listening to them. I was listening to those before I started mine. But it was really the rural areas that like I wanted to hear more about. And it was um the Midwest area that can be different sometimes. We deal with a lot of grass fires here,
Yeah.
and it's not quite where you're getting out west where you're doing actually the foot and tool trekking, and stuff like that. We're finding them on the back of grass rigs still and things like that,
Mhm.
and it's a little bit different than other places in the country, but similar. Everything is that way. It's different but similar.
Yeah.
So I wanted to definitely talk about more about that. I wanted to get into the fact of, okay, my husband and I are both doing this together. So what's that dynamic like? Like what is it like? And it was interesting. We had to find ways to work it out when we were both on the department. Like he would never train me on something because he would always be too afraid that I get hurt or baby me or something. Right. So
Yeah.
like whenever we were at a training, he wouldn't train me. Somebody else would. If we were on a fire scene, I mean, if we had to be on the same team to do something, we would. But otherwise, we try to stay on opposite sides of the fire scene or doing other things with other people, for several different reasons. But for one of like, okay, we're not worried about each other that
Yeah.
way, we're not babying each other. And then also to gain trust with the rest of the department, it's like, okay, we're not just a husband and wife, cling on to each other,
Yeah.
whatever. We were actually very separate when it came to us being on the same department for a while. And people may have thought it was weird, or maybe they thought it was fine. I'm not quite sure exactly. I've never got any feedback on that. But when we were at the station, we were our own two separate people. And then when we got home, that's when we got a chance to like, oh, remember this part? This was so cool. Or this was, and it made things interesting when we got home. Cause it's like, okay, this is what I got to do with that fire. Oh,
Yeah.
well, this is what I got to do with that fire. And this is what I saw. And so it made things kind of fun. But we had to make up rules like that. So I kind of wanted to talk about that, and um before I was an actual firefighter with the fire department, when I was just a photographer, I was on our fire department's auxiliary. So for a lot of volunteer fire departments, they have what's called a ladies auxiliary, or sometimes they have other names to it. But basically, they're the spouses or girlfriends or whatever of the firefighters, and they kind of help around. A lot of it tends to do with feeding the firefighters on scene or helping with some other things like that. Otherwise, they help around the community. So I was kind of doing dual purpose there.
Yeah.
So it was that very much, okay, where does this firewife life kind of cross over with the firefighter, and where do things get stuck? And it was a point where I could actually see from both sides a lot of the times because I have been on both sides. I understand both takes. And especially now, again, with my husband on the career department, I definitely see both takes again. It is very interesting. Like right now, he's gone on another 24 hours. He left this morning. And I don't know. Some days it's hard, some days it's easy. And some days when things go wrong, like I have to fix it and it's
Yeah.
different, you know? So it's just that point of like, okay, let's start bridging the gap between the two and try to explain to the firewives what the firefighters are actually thinking and vice versa, you know? It's kind of nice to be able to hopefully be that mediator in some ways because
Yeah.
there's a lot of miscommunication that can happen between the two out
Yeah.
there. Um, so those are definitely some of the things. And then otherwise it's just all of the random ideas that come to my head. Like this last week I actually put out an episode of what I learned from band camp and stuff like that from high school and college band and what got me prepared for the fire service. And most people wouldn't have put the two and two together.
Oh,
And before I did another one, I'm a big Disney fan. So I grabbed, you know, what Disney does right and how can we apply it to the fire service, you know? Like it's those random thoughts that come to me that's like, okay, like this is kind of weird, kind of geeky, kind of I don't know what it is. And let's just throw it out there and see what people think.
yeah. That's funny. So I enjoy listening just because you could tell that you just you have a trying to think of how to describe it. You just enjoy talking fire service. You enjoy kind of digging in and learning people's lives. One of the things that you have in your podcast is you have a little family section. Like, can you talk
Yes.
about that? I know that's kind of one of your favorite parts of it. Tell us a little bit about that.
So we have the family firefighter survival section of the episodes, and it's every single guest episode if they're a firefighter, or if they work somewhere in the fire service or whatever profession they're in. I like to dig into how they make it work with their family life. And it's not just, okay, this is when you talk, this is when you call, or whatever these are things you do together, but it can also get into some of the problems people might have. It can get into um I don't know, it kind of goes everywhere. It's I never try to script it. There's I think one or two times I did just because like there's a Christmas episode I did. So it's like, okay, what do you do for Christmas? Because this is kind of fun. But otherwise, it's wherever I feel like going or they feel like going with people. And depending on the person, we will we will push and get into deeper subjects and others will stay more on the surface. So it really depends on their comfort level. You know, some
Yeah,
people it's very tough for them to want to get to those under layers. But when we get a chance to get to those under layers or when we really start to get to stuff that is really deep and people obviously don't like talking about. And these are the times that we can all actually see, okay, I'm not alone in this. Somebody else is going through it too. Or um, just, okay, somebody with that mindset, how do they think that I can better interact with them, you know? And I've actually heard of a couple people who their spouses have listened to those sections after they talk with me, and they found out things they didn't know that they really hadn't talked about too much. And it's just, it's crazy to be able to help open up those conversations and open up those doorways to be able to see, okay, this is the side where the firefighter's actually struggling with the family side of like what they want more of or what they're trying to do. Because as much as you try to explain to your spouse, there's always miscommunication there. I mean, it's the story of our lives. That is like my biggest pet peeve in the entire world is miscommunication. And I do it all the time myself.
yeah,
You know, and so just trying to take those times to just, okay, be open, be honest. Let's get to what you're actually feeling in this. And even if we can't solve any problems, just talking about it may open up another thought in your head, even if you go back and listen to it later.
yeah, yeah. I think that is just speaking personally. I think that is probably one of the biggest areas that I feel. You talked about a push earlier to get the podcast started. That's something that I feel definitely is kind of pushed for me. I
Hmm.
don't at times like it just because there's things that I just don't enjoy talking about. It's not that it's you know it hurts to talk about it or anything like that. It's just it's nice to be able to put those things behind you and not worry about it. But at the same time, I definitely recognize that by doing that, you're basically going through those situations for nothing. You're holding on to something that can help. who knows how many other people that are either going through it or have been through it. And so I definitely feel like, that is something that we all need to really, really kind of stretch ourselves at, an area that we all need to do a little bit better at, because we all have interesting, ridiculous, crazy life stories, and we need to share that. Is that kind of how you feel as well?
Oh, definitely. There was an episode I put out last fall when my husband had first started Academy, and that was a whirlwind, let me tell you. That is a whole new world if you're not even close to used to that kind of a lifestyle when they start going through Academy. I put out an episode. It was a very raw episode. I wasn't planning on recording about it, and I was going to do a whole different subject, and then my mouth just kept going, kept talking, and it was the hardest thing in the world to actually press publish on that one. Just because I was getting extremely emotional during that episode. I had been crying, I had been freaking out, and I look back on it now, and some of it seems a little, for lack of better words, like petty or whatever. It's like it wasn't that bad, but at the same time, it was a big change for me, and I didn't know how to handle it, and I didn't have too many people at the time to talk to about, like, okay, is this really Academy life? Is this going to be this bad for forever? And I didn't know what to do. And so just talking about it, it was extremely hard to talk about. It was extremely hard to put it out there for the world to see, because I don't know who listens to my podcast. It could be my neighbor, it could be the people at my department, it could be, my bosses, my superiors and things like that. And to have them hear all of these all of these thoughts, in my head, and these insecurities and stuff, it can get very intimidating to want to publish. And
Oh yeah.
and I understand that with everyone coming on the podcast talking about the family stuff at the end, it's hard because you're opening up for other people to hear this, and eventually you just get to the point of, like, okay, yeah, it will be helping somebody else. That I'm getting pushed to talk about this for some reason. I don't know what it is, but I need to talk about it apparently. And maybe somebody else needs to hear it, because they need to know that, like, oh, okay, like, it's not weird for me to be feeling this way because she felt this way or he felt this way. And yeah, so
Yeah, the episode that I was on with you, it's like, I think 2.5 hours we said.
it was.
But you're basically describing kind of what that was like for me too. And you talked about spouses listening and maybe learning things that they didn't know. I wouldn't doubt that there's some stuff in there that my wife could say the same to. But I just I want to put myself in that situation. And when we looking back to when we kind of first started talking about doing that episode, if you'll remember, we were talking about some leadership topics and all the normal stuff that is out there.
Yeah.
And then you brought that section up, and it just, something in me felt like that's where it's at. That's where we need to really talk. You know what I mean? That's the other stuff I love talking about, and that's kind of areas of that I'm passionate about, and feel like hopefully I can share some things that I've learned as well. But when we started talking about kind of the possibilities of the family section, that it really just kind of screamed at me that we need to really spend some time right there. And so it was good. It was good to kind of talk through some of those things, because just the dynamic things that we have been through, abuse and addictions and foster care and adoption and split families and combined families. It's just ridiculous, the different topics that my family has really touched on and lived through, that each one of them somebody out there probably needs to hear. And so that was really kind of, I wouldn't say fun, looking forward to it. I was definitely looking forward to it. and it was just kind of a weird thing, because I just felt like hopefully there was something there that somebody needed to hear. So that was I really appreciate you kind of letting that be a big thing and a long section of that, and really enjoyed that talk for sure.
Yeah, I think we ended up what 2.5 hour podcast, and I'm pretty sure that that family firefighter survival talk ended up being either an hour and a half or 2 hours of that podcast. But it was so worth it, and I'm so happy we made that the bulk of it. Because usually that's just the end tag. That's anywhere from 20 to 30 minutes. In the end of a podcast. So like the full hour is something about something else, and then the last half hour is that family firefighter survival, and just making that section the big part of yours was it was such a gift to be able to just dig in and honestly thank you for how vulnerable you were during it, just because it is helping somebody out there. And I've heard so many responses of people who were amazed they've never heard things like that before. I don't think you've ever talked about a lot of that before, and they had other problems in their life that, like, oh, they were similar, and it's just nice to hear somebody else going through it, and get a little bit of advice through there of ways they could start handling it, or at
Yeah.
least ways that things they do get better. It doesn't seem like it most of the time, but they will get better.
Yeah. And that's kind of another balancing act or struggle that I've faced, or I've felt this entire journey of mine is I don't want it to be like a constant negative thing. It's not like I just want to talk about, struggles and challenges and things like that. But at the same time, that's not the focus.
Mhm.
That's just the topic. The focus is winning, and beating these challenges and overcoming the obstacles and things like that. So I have to kind of remind myself that even though, yeah, a lot of what I talk about is probably got, some defeat and failure and all that in it, that's not what it's about. It's about, either getting to the other side or that constant journey to find the other side. And so that's kind of what I've really tried to put a lot into, because you, like you said, there are millions of podcasts. It seems like there's thousands of fire podcasts,
Oh yeah, and there's new ones
but
popping up every
it's,
day.
it's crazy. But like you said, it there's a lot of podcasts out there over strategies and a lot of tactics, and it's good stuff. I don't think that I'm sitting here downing that, but how many are truly real, dealing
Mhm.
with real people and real stories, and being completely just raw and open and honest about things. That's like kind of you explained for yourself, and that's why I wanted you to explain it, just to see kind of how it mirrored, what I feel. But that's what I feel like I'm doing. Yeah, there are lots out there, but it's not a competition. I mean,
Oh
there's
no.
tons of them that are far, outdoing me numbers wise. I it doesn't really matter. Yeah, I want as many people to hear and absorb it as possible. I'm not saying that, but I'm not in competition with these people. I don't feel like there's many even in the same kind of category as what I'm doing. And so it's similar, but I feel like we should be doing a lot more to help each other kind of build each other up. And that's kind of, another reason I wanted to have you on, is to really try to make that, you talked about the brotherhood and the fire service. Well, why can't that be the same thing with the podcast community and sharing each other and kind of helping each other out? And so that's kind of the explanation that for mine that I asked of yours. So it is very similar for sure.
No, I think I definitely agree with you on the podcasting world. There shouldn't be any competition. And the way I've always looked at it, since even before I started, was if you are doing something that's truly authentic to you, you don't copy anybody else. Of course, people are going to do things similar, or how many episodes that I put out or other people put out that are on the same topics every week, and not
Yeah.
on purpose. It's not like we talk to each other,
Yeah.
they just happen to come out. But if you're doing something that's so authentic to you, people can tell, and people know that you're not trying to one up anybody else or doing whatever. It's what's coming from your heart. It's what's coming from you. And that's what people want to hear. And the people who are meant to listen to you will listen to you, like it, it's just, you have to make sure that you're on that track of, okay, who are you? What is stuff you want to talk about? Don't
Yeah.
try to go out and get more listeners. Don't try to go out and, like fish people in or whatever. Do you, and you will attract the right people. But more on top of that I love to look at it this way. And I hope more and more people are going to listen to it or hear it this way and see it this way as well. But it doesn't matter if we talk about the same subjects. If you and I talk about the exact same thing, Jeremy, I'm going to say something different than you will. Or even if we say the exact same thing, I'm going to say it in a different way than you will. And it's going to hit somebody else differently. Maybe somebody listens to both of our podcasts, and they love them both equally, but different. Maybe the way I say something makes them think about something in a completely different light. And another person listening to you, oh, it clicked.
Yeah.
I don't care where they get that click from. I don't care if it's you or if it's me or if it's, Corley, or if it's, Melon, or if it's Solar. I don't care where they get that click. If it clicks, I'm happy, and if we can come together and do these things, and team up more and actually get these messages out, you can actually make a better fire service and never be in competition with one another. You can hit the same topics from different lanes and just know you're all on the same team. We're all on the fire service team.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's one of the fun things about having guests on, and especially the times I've had multiple people is getting those, those different opinions, those different ways of saying things right there, instead of, it's always great to hear feedback on the back end, but to have people on that you respect and friends, and hear their point of view right there in a discussion, just like you would in a firehouse or at a conference or wherever. That's really fun. I really enjoy that.
Yeah.
What have you, so you did a little bit of branching out in the Ozarks with a little nudging from some people, but
Some people as in you.
you did some live interviews and met some new people. So how, I know you were kind of like on cloud nine that night, just excited about it. Just describe kind of the feeling that this is bringing, the meeting new people and kind of the opportunities it's giving. Well, describe a little bit about that.
Overall, scared. I will be very honest. That was the overall feeling, honestly, of the entire night. Was an underlying just scared of it all. And I know probably most people wouldn't assume that's the feeling I would get from it, but there was so much happening. It was so new. It was a conference I'd never gone to before. It was not knowing how to do this. It was that morning at breakfast, you and Tara telling me like, hey, you need to do this. I'm like, what? Like, and I'm just thinking, why aren't you doing this? You're the podcast guy too. Like, and just push me to just, okay, fine. And then, yeah, sitting through your class. I think sitting through your class is what actually made me actually push forward and actually continue with it. Cause you were talking about it in the class of like taking the opportunities that come your way. And I'm like, well, crap, Jeremy, now I can't say no to interviewing people. So I don't know if you had that planned or not, or whatever it was, but
Just worked out that way, I guess.
it worked out that way. So good. So then, yeah, I just quickly scrounged things together, made sure I wanted to ask people, who were running the conference, just make sure it's like, okay, is this actually okay? Like, don't want to like run on anybody's turf or anything. And then, yeah, just starting to interview random people. And then got introduced to a few firefighters who were taking me around to introduce me to everybody else. I'm like, what is happening? And yeah, you're in the booth right next to me and you're seeing all this happening. And I think you were lined up to be like one of the first ones to come in. And I think you were one of the last ones to actually come in the booth too, because it was just so crazy. It was just, there was so much happening. And at one point, like I'm going up and I'm meeting somebody else, and then Chief Riley's like sitting in the booth waiting for me to like start recording. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, this is big. I gotta go get back there to talk with him. Like, what's happening? Dennis Riley sitting in the booth, ready to talk, just waiting on me. Like, when does that happen? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
When does that happen? I don't know. So, but overall, try to calm myself down a little bit here. Overall, it was just the overwhelming of like, oh my goodness, what is happening? I'm scared. What it's going to be like? What am I going to say to these people? Some people I've heard so much about, but at the same time, I know nothing about. So where do I start this conversation from? Like Andy Sakadato from the Water Thieves. I didn't know much about him overall, but I know he puts on a great program. So where do I start that conversation from? Like, how does this work? Is it awkward? Is it not? Like, and trying to, admit those things to myself of like, it's okay. Just talk.
Yeah.
That's all you need to do. Just start meeting people and talk. They don't care. They are as humble as anybody else. They are amazing. I love the people in the fire service, especially everybody who's at the conference. Like, they were fantastic. And they just love the chance to get to talk and to spread their message too. So that's all you have to do. Like, you don't have to have tons of notes of everything that you've memorized about them, even though that would be nice. Take the extra time when you get back, learn more about them, and stuff. That's all they want. They're okay with meeting new people. They're okay if you've never heard their name. Okay. Side story from that conference. I was sitting at the bar on Thursday night, because Friday was the first day, right? So Thursday night, sitting at the bar talking with some people I'd never met before. Awesome. This guy comes up, and so we're all talking and we're introducing ourselves, and he's just like, "Hey, I'm Mike from Buffalo." I'm like, "Awesome." So we start talking a little bit, nothing crazy. And you know where I'm going with this. And then the next morning we get into the keynote, and it's Mike Lombardo.
Mike from Buffalo.
And I'm like, what the heck? Like, I've heard the name before. I've never seen a picture of him. I had no idea. I had no idea this is who we're having beers with the night before. Like, what? And it's just crazy. But I didn't know a thing about him. He didn't care. Actually, I think he might have liked it.
That speaks a lot right there, of just, you're talking about how friendly and how humble these people are. And I totally agree with it. But just that story right there is amazing, because he's one of the biggest names in the fire service, period.
Yeah.
But he didn't have to tell you that. He had no intentions of making sure you knew who he was. He was just Mike
from Buffalo.
That's pretty cool.
Oh man, it was crazy. But yeah, just going in and talking with all these people and stuff. And like you said, Cloud 9, my anxiety was on overload. My everything was on overload. Like, what is happening? How's this going? And just trying to like, okay, keep my brain straight to keep talking to all these people, and open up so many new doors and so many things. And it was just from a small opportunity that somebody happened to put in my brain that morning and push me to do. And I just got subtle pushes all day. And I don't believe in coincidences. I believe coincidences are God's way of telling me, hey, this is something that needs to happen. Yeah. And so getting those subtle pushes throughout the day to actually do it and having things work out the way they did. I was meant to talk to those people that night for some reason. And I'm just starting to actually get full episodes with all those people, scheduled and put out there. And it's exciting. And it's crazy because I'm taking the extra time to research these people to get in on their story, and to then to hopefully dig into stuff that, maybe they don't talk about that often, in addition to the stuff they're known for. So yeah.
And that's been another fun thing for me personally, is not just kind of focusing on their expertise areas or what they're known for, but the other stuff too, the family stuff and the faith stuff and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Their story, that's been really great to find out that yes, these are real people. They're super smart and they're awesome in what they do, but they are people, and they face problems just like anybody else, and they love their family just like anybody else, and this is how they have to make it work, and all that. And that's been really fun to kind of humanize these people that are really bigger than life, personalities.
It's crazy because everybody starts from somewhere. Everybody was a nobody. Everybody, it's crazy to think about that. Everybody who are these big legends, or they know so much about, you know, about anything. I just can't think of a subject at the moment, but about anything. They started from knowing literally zero about anything. And it's crazy to think that they are where they are now. But everyone's just people. They're just human. They're just like all of
Yeah.
us. And it reminds me just of one of the episodes of yours that I absolutely love listening to. And I actually listen to it to this day. It's saved on my phone. So I replay it quite often, is your episode with Andy Starnes. And oh my goodness, the first time I heard that, like, it blew me back in my seat. I'm like, what is happening?
Yeah.
And I listen to it a lot just because I absolutely love it. And it is bringing that family and faith and passion for all of this. It's spinning it all together. And that's what I love.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's literally, as I was saying that, and I think I brought it up in the episode that I was on with you. So I wasn't gonna say it again, but that's the main one I had in my mind is Andy Starnes, the guru of thermal imaging. And I don't think we ever said the word thermal imaging the whole time. It was
Yeah.
just, it was just great conversation with a super stand-up guy. And so that was absolutely exactly what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
The I will say this, to kind of go back to what we were talking about, the time you did the interviews at the conference. Really, the reason I did that, the reason I put you on the hot seat and wanted to challenge you to do that is because, like we started out this thing, I feel like there's a lot of similarities between, just personality wise between us. And I know that something like that would be hard for me as well, especially in an area that you're not familiar with. And I've learned that really well back in September when we did the Safer conference in North Carolina. My wife went up
Mm.
there with me, and I did a lecture there. I knew one person, no, two people, and one of those was actually not from North Carolina. Everybody up there was North Carolina, and I didn't know anybody, and that was awkward. And so I know exactly kind of how that would feel, but at the same time, it was a great opportunity with lots of people there that I knew would be more than willing to just meet you and to sit down with you for a little bit. And so that's kind of why I wanted to push you in that direction. Sometimes you need a little bit of push, and so I'm really glad that you took that opportunity because, like you said, it's leading to more opportunities, and those would not happen if you didn't just step up and just kind of put yourself out there. And so that's great to see.
I know it was one of those that, like, it reinforced my brain definitely that most people are willing to do stuff like that, especially if they are, an instructor themselves or some sort of speaker or whatever. They're willing to come on podcasts and talk. They're willing to talk with you, even if you don't have a podcast, talk with them about whatever. They're willing to do it, But yeah, my biggest fear through all that is like, okay, what am I going to say? Yes. But I think more than that was, who's going to say yes? Who's going to say no? Like, are they going to say no? How do I go up to somebody and ask them to be on this thing? How do I explain this? Like, I'm a nobody from nowhere with a podcast that almost no one's heard of yet. Like,
Yeah.
how do I make this work? And why would they ever say yes to coming
Yeah.
onto mine? Because it doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense. There, some of the people I've got to come on my podcast before, it's like, that doesn't make sense. Like, why are they saying yes to coming on? Like, this is crazy. I know there was one time I asked Richard Zuniga from
Yeah.
California to come on, and like when I asked him to come on, it was an immediate like 2 seconds later he emailed back saying yes, let's do it. I'm like, why are you saying yes to me? You have no idea who I am. I am so small. Like, this doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah.
But and yeah, that was like one of the biggest fears from that day, was like, they're not going to say yes. They're not going to do this, and I'm just going to be left kind of sitting, and it's going to be awkward. And that didn't happen. People in the fire service are awesome, and it's one thing that some people did say no. Okay,
Yeah.
there were a couple of people that did say no. They were either busy, or there are a couple people who had some to drink, so we decided to postpone, to another day or something.
Yeah.
And so there were some of those, but overall, like, yeah, most people are going to say yes, and the worst they can say is no. And it's not
Yeah.
necessarily because they don't want to do it. It's because the circumstances aren't quite right for them right then.
Yeah.
So,
And either way, I mean, even if it is just because they don't know or they don't want to, or
mhm.
whatever, or if they are the few people in the fire service that are too good to do it, or whatever, it does. Like you said, it doesn't matter. I've gotten some no's as well. Most of them have been very respectful, and I'm more than happy to say thank you for your time. I appreciate
Mhm.
doing for the fire service, and leave it at that, and that's fine. It try not to take it personal. I mean, why would I take it personal? Because there are a lot of things that I have to say no to. So you just have to take it as it comes. But
Mhm.
just like you said, the worst thing that could happen is to have somebody say no, thank you, and that's going to be okay. There's so much more that you can lose by not putting yourself out there, as opposed to the opportunity to be told no. And
Yeah.
so yeah, that's awesome. Do you have anything coming on the horizon? Anything new? Anything different?
Let's see. So the Fireflicks and Chills coming some more, I think. So we're gonna try to do some more of those coming up. Otherwise, nothing too crazy yet. I'm trying to get a handle on everything I have so far and just make sure that's like in a good spot before I add more to it. I'm always looking for new guests. So I guess if anyone knows of anyone else who'd like to be a guest, or if you're listening to this and you have something to talk about or whatever, like, I'm always looking for new people to be on. It may not be right away, but I love having a list of people to be able to reach out to and contact and set something up with. Um, Other than that, like, most of my fire conferences are done for the year. Um, I was planning on going to, I think there was one that was actually supposed to be happening like either this week or next week or at some
At
point that was supposed to be.
Firehouse?
Well, there was a small one that was supposed to be happening actually like nearby you in Oklahoma, and Chris and I were going to be coming down there for like a day to do it. But it ended up
Oh,
getting
okay.
canceled, which is really sad. It was really
Oh,
sad.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, yeah. A couple. That was last week. Yep, I
Yeah.
was I was signed
Okay.
up for that too.
Yeah. I was really excited for it
Yep.
because oh goodness. Now I
Todd
can't remember.
Edwards, Anthony Roulette,
Anthony Roulette. Yeah, and
Mickey Farrell, maybe.
I think so. I think you're right.
No.
But I had taken Anthony Rouette's class at Lake of the
Mhm.
Ozarks,
Yeah,
and I fell in love with it. I told Chris, you have to see this
yeah.
class. And so it was on the list for that. And like, yep, we're going, because it was, I think it was the beds to bundles class. And it was so much knowledge. My brain was blown. I'm like, I need to sit through this again, because
Yeah.
that's a lot. He
Yeah.
has so much knowledge in that. And so it's really sad I couldn't, that got canceled and stuff, but there's gonna be more opportunities. It seems like there are tons of fire conferences popping up all over, but
Oh, yeah.
so nothing too crazy there. Yeah, nothing really until the Les Luger conference this coming year. And we're trying to get everything finalized for that. It's funny how that always happens. It's always like a organized chaos sometimes,
Yeah.
right? With fire conferences. If anyone's ran any, they know exactly what I mean. um, but yeah, nothing new, nothing too new. Just trying to keep going with what I'm doing, and trying to find new people to talk to and old people to talk to about new subjects. And yeah, just trying to get out there and do me the best I can. How about that? That's probably like my thing, is like, okay, how can I be true to me
Mm.
through everything I'm doing in the future? And that's
Yeah.
probably my path of what I'm going on.
That's
So
a pretty good goal to shoot for, I guess. Yeah. So what else? Anything else you'd like to talk about before we go?
um That is a good question. That is a good question because I feel like, well, like I always have stuff in my brain for like everything, it feels like, but I don't want to like completely derail us into like a whole new conversation that doesn't make any sense with anything else we're not talking about. But
It doesn't matter.
um, I don't know, like a big thing in my brain lately, and okay, completely off the rails. I know, completely different way than you were thinking about any of this, probably. But a big thing in my brain lately is um, this whole thought of having the recruitment side of the fire service at the moment. I don't know. It's just been overtaking my brain because everyone's having problems with it everywhere,
Yeah.
right? And it's something that I've looked at for a long time, and I think I see it as pretty black and white to me overall. I know it's not, but it seems pretty black and white to me that if you have a good culture of hardworking people and a good brotherhood in your fire service, people are going to want to be a part of that. Now, to get that brotherhood is extremely difficult. We all know, we all work for it every day, and it's a hard mix to gain. But it's one of those, it's like, okay, think about that. You're able to bring people in. And I actually think about it, it starts with the volunteer fire service. It actually starts there. It doesn't start when it comes to the career side. And you're seeing a decline in recruits, in applicants for the career side because we don't have the volunteers like we used to. I mean, let's all be honest, we most of the applicants are usually volunteers that decide they want to go full time.
Yeah.
So if we started from the volunteer side, actually put extra work into that. And I know it's difficult, it's tough with like city entities and budgets and stuff like that. But if there's ever a way to like work with the city, have the city work with the volunteer departments on getting their stuff in check or whatever, or like, that's probably not the best way to put that, but like, helping them with their
Yeah.
recruitment efforts for the volunteer side of like, hey, we know you can't join us right now or whatever it is, go join this volunteer department or something like that, get them getting people, and that'll actually bring you more applicants, because that's where we're losing a lot of people at. And it's a big cycle that goes around here, and we're missing that entry into the volunteer side that feeds the rest of the cycle at the moment in the US fire service. So yeah, completely off the rails, but that's just been in my brain. And so
well, it's interesting because I've had a lot of conversations about that as well. It seems like everybody around Oklahoma is hiring, everybody around my department in central Oklahoma and tons of people up here in the northeast corner where I live by Tulsa. And I don't really understand it either. We just closed a application process at my department and had 450 people, which okay, it's a lot, I guess. But 20 years ago when I applied, there were 960 something people apply for it. And I just don't understand why there's less now, and not even less, but half as many as there were then. It seems to me like it would be a better job now than it was back then. And it would be, just the environment that we're living in, to have something stable. And so I don't understand myself. I really don't. I've talked to some friends up here in a little town close to where I live, and they were hiring just needing one person. Can't remember how many they had starting out. It was not many. And literally by the time they worked through the process, they had one person left. That was it. And luckily, they say that it was a good fit. So hopefully that works out. But man, just to need one person and only have one to choose from, it's crazy. I don't understand. So yeah, I'm with you on that.
Yeah, it's not that I think that any of these departments should, ease up any of their processes, like I don't think so. They're there for a reason. Especially when it comes to even just being a good fit. That is a reason. Like if you have somebody in there who's not going to fit the culture that you have in your fire service, in your fire department, they are not going to like it there, and they're going to fight you tooth and nail and everything. It's not saying that you shouldn't have different personalities on your department. It's just you need to make sure that like they're actually going to enjoy their time there and want to stay, because that's what you're hiring for. You're hiring for longevity, whatever. Yeah, longevity. There you go. Words. You're hiring for that. You're not hiring for someone to come in for 2 years and then leave to another department. So it's tough, and they need to keep in those processes. But yeah. So no, I know it's kind of completely off the rails, but for some reason my brain keeps going there here lately. So it's like, oh, let's talk about it a little bit. But with like you're saying, like 20 years ago, well, obviously 9/11 stuff like that was just over 20 years ago. But I'm wondering, do any departments out there, maybe they do, maybe they don't, do they have charts of what it was like 20 years prior to 9/11, 10 years prior to 9/11? Like, was there just a bump, or is it always declining, or like where is that coming from, and what's happening in the world at those time frames, not just 9/11 necessarily, but let's talk about recessions too. Let's talk about pandemics. Let's talk about even with the raise in news stories, against public personnel and stuff like that, right? Like, when are these things like becoming trends, and then what is it looking like with our recruitment, because it's usually not just one thing that's doing it, but where's pay, where's pay for everything else? And I can't remember who I was talking about this with. I think it might have been Corley when he was on one of the episodes. But if you make this job just like any other job, if you take away the brotherhood, if you take away what makes this, what everyone says, the greatest job on earth, it's just another job. And if it doesn't pay enough and that's all you make it is just another job, people are going to find another job out there that actually fits their family life better. So you got to make the brotherhood happen. You got to make that culture happen, and people want to be there for that cause, to be able to bring people to you.
Absolutely, that's for sure. You good now? You got
I'm good now. I'm good now. I swear. Okay.
No, it's good. I mean, I appreciate it. I mean, you know me. I don't follow any strict lines of conversation, so it's fine with me for sure.
I was gonna say, apparently it's coming out so much right now that apparently I just need to do an episode about it, and then maybe it'll get it off my chest enough that I can actually focus on something else. So
yeah, you brought up Chief Soller. That'd be a good one to have on,
be a great one
with.
And I've been actually looking for an episode to possibly do with him, and I need to reach out to him and see if he'd be up for it. But
I'm sure he'd be all about it. Well, anything else to kind of tie it up? Where can we find you, and any last thoughts?
Yes, if you want to find me, and my random thoughts that come up, like kind of the last one I just had, that is very normal for me to have happen. So you got totally normal Taylor happening on your podcast, Jeremy. But you can find me at Couplings Fire Podcast, pretty much. I shouldn't say everywhere because I'm not on everything, but it's Couplings Fire Podcast on Facebook, on Instagram. That's my email. You just add gmail.com at the end of it. You can find my podcast that way on hopefully any podcast platform you're listening to it on. If you can't find my podcast on your platform, let me know so I can get it on there for you, but it should be on most of them now. Otherwise, yeah, do that. Let's see. I'm trying to think of anything else. It's like, I don't have too much in lines of merch or anything, or a website quite yet. I'm still pretty small for stuff, but I do have stickers out there. If anyone's wanting any, let me know. And just join me in trying to, I don't know, get the message of family, and get the message of doing better and being different and being your unique self out in the fire service.
Perfect. So last couple times I've recorded, I stole something from you and Corley about the whole rating and review thing, sending some stickers. So Taylor and I, like, either one, if you're willing to take the time to write up a review and rate it for us, we are more than happy to send you some stickers to show you our appreciation. So if you'd like to do that for the Couplings Fire Podcast, she has the same deal going, so just let us know.
Yes. And like we said about before, and I'm sure you're with us too, Jeremy, we don't do that to gain popularity or our own good feelings from it. We do it to make sure that others can find the podcast. I did a whole episode one time about algorithms, and and the way the reviews work, like they take these algorithms and like, oh, people like listening to this, let's show it to more people. And so if you like listening to this, if you're actually getting good content out of it, I want to make sure that you actually enjoy listening to it before you actually go rate it, right?
Yes,
But
absolutely.
if you enjoy listening to it, somebody else will too.
Yeah.
And so if you want to do something to help us, that doesn't require spending money or doing whatever, simply reading it, reviewing it, help spreading the message out there, even sharing it to one person will help us spread each message and make the fire service better.
That's right. Absolutely. I totally agree. Just at the very least, it's a sign of appreciation that somebody does that, because, I'm just like anybody else, to take a minute isn't that much, but it's hard to sit there and do things like that sometimes. So yes,
Mhm.
definitely appreciate anything that somebody's willing to do for us. So
Oh man, it's just so crazy whenever I get a message like that. It's just like, what? Like,
yeah,
oh, it just melts my heart. It really does.
yeah,
It really does.
makes it all worth it, huh?
Yeah.
Well, Taylor, I really appreciate having you on and your time and just being able to share a little bit of your story, and look forward to getting to know you some more in the future.
Thank you, Jeremy. This has been amazing. Thank you for the opportunity and the honor to be on this podcast. This has been like 2 years in the making in my brain of like, oh my goodness, like what is happening? I'm actually on this podcast right now. Like what? And it's just crazy to me. So thank you so much for this opportunity.
You're welcome. I've enjoyed it for sure, and enjoy just what you're doing for the fire service. You might not see it, you might not feel it, but you are doing something that needs to be done. So thank you, and thank you for sharing. So appreciate it. And everybody, go out, listen to some Couplings Fire Podcast episodes, and enjoy what you're hearing. So thank you for your time. Until next time, as always, stay humble and do work.